Welcome, book lovers, to another episode of Storytime, brought to you by Timothy Bateson. Each episode features the work of an awesome author from the fantasy, urban fantasy, or science fiction genre. This time, I'm excited to bring you Heart of the Mountain by fantasy author Jeanette OHagan. So, without further ado, it's time to pull up a chair and plug in your headphones, because Storytime begins in 3, 2, 1. An updraft caught Zadeki and flung him about like a spinning leaf. Clouds of snow blasted into his face, ruffling his feathers and blinding him. Another gust hit him side on, pushing him off balance. It had been a foolish decision to fly over the mountains. The clear blue sky of the early afternoon was a fading memory as he was caught up in a world of swirling snow and ice. If only he could find shelter, but even with his eagle-sharp eyes, he could see no more than a white, fuzzy blur in every direction. Gathering his trembling muscles and spreading out his flight feathers, he fought against the might of the wind. As the whiteout lessened for a few moments, a sharp, angular peak loomed in front of him. His heart racing, he tilted his wings in a desperate attempt to turn. His flight pinions clipped a ledge. He lurched. His right side slammed into the icy rock, sending him spiraling down, ricocheting off the sheer cliff face. Pain screamed through him as fragile wing bones snapped. All control of his descent vanished. So much for showing the kin leader he was old enough to be a pathfinder. His thoughts frayed and darkness took him. Delvina clutched her brother's thick felt jerkin. The air was strange in these outer tunnels, laden with the smell of strange resin and a bitter icy bite she was not used to. A gust ruffled her bangs, sending a shiver through her. "Are you sure we should be doing this, Retsa? The outside is dangerous." "Shush, it'll be more dangerous if we're caught." She lowered her voice. "Who would hear us? No one's stupid enough to come out this far." As Retsa rounded a corner, he pulled it to such a sudden stop that she bumped into him. "What is it?" she hissed. A pale yellow glow came from the other end of the tunnel, different from the dancing smoky red of flame or the focused cool blue of the glimmer lights. It illuminated Retsa's snub nose and glistened in his wide eyes, his pupils contracting to slits against the sudden glare. "Sunlight?" Her voice caught in her throat. Retsa grunted. "Maybe. Come on, we can't give up now." They shuffled along the tunnel as the circle of light ahead of them brightened. Delvina shaded her eyes, her mouth dry. Why had they thought this was a good idea? A freezing wind blasted Retsa's face as he poked it out of the entrance. He gripped the tunnel walls and squinted at the white blur outside. Delvina pressed up against him, her grasp on his jerkin almost choking him, her breath warm in his ear. He took a deep breath. He was glad his twin sister was with him, though he wasn't going to admit it to her. A flurry of white flakes swirled in front of his nose. Putting out a hand, he caught one. It melted away to a tiny teardrop in his calloused palm. As his eyes adjusted, he could make out mounds of the soft, white substance smothering the world outside. The open space of the cauldron went up and up, higher than even the Grand Cavern. Above the sharp rim, grey streamers raced against a black sky, studded with pinpricks of light, like ribbons of glowworms on a cave roof. A shudder ran through him. The outside was even stranger than he had imagined. A swathe of the grey stuff thinned, revealing a round, burnished disk of bright golden light. He pointed. "The sun." Delvina cleared her throat. "It's not bright enough to be the sun. And look, there's another one." She pointed to another disk, further down in the chaotic expanse above their heads. It winked back at them, silvery, almost as bright and misshapen, like a mushroom with an edge shaved off. "I think they're both moons." "Yes, 2 moons. That's what I meant to say. So, where's the sun?" He scanned the sky. "Maybe it's night." His twin's voice quivered on the last word. He swallowed against the lump in his throat. If this was night, then what would the day be like? "We'd better stop wasting time." His voice was harsher than he had intended. They pushed out into the open, wading through soft mounds that slumped to the side and muffled the sound of their footprints. Sweeping aside the piles with his hands, he rummaged around, picking up and discarding rocks, spindly sticks, and other debris. Soon his clothes were soaked, and his fingers aching and numb. His sister's pale face had a bluish tinge around her lips, and her chin was shuddering. A sullen dread settled inside him. It was supposed to be such a simple challenge. Sneak outside and find something unusual to give to the Greenstone South crew. If it was good enough, perhaps he and Delvina would be accepted as apprentices, but it could take hours to find anything under this thick blanket of fluffy wetness. He thrust his frozen hands under his armpits and ground his teeth. "This is useless." Delvina didn't respond. She was poking a stick behind a spur of rock jutting out from the sheer cliffs that enclosed the cauldron. Her long ash-blonde plait fell like a thick rope down her back, a pale streak against the matted brown of her jerkin. If they didn't find something, their quest would have failed, but if they stayed out here much longer, they would freeze to death. His sister squealed and jumped back. "What is it?" He pressed through the path her body had cleared. "It moved!" She pointed at a heap of white and grey dark fronds that blended into the white stuff and the grey of the rock behind. He leaned forward. The delicate fronds were like feathers of the small cave birds, only larger. Some of them were stuck together with a dark red substance. She poked it with the stick again. The mound shifted, a large wing-like object fluttering. He breathed in sharply. Feathers, wings, and, now that he thought about it, he could see the hooked beak with sharp tip and closed eyes. Its other wing was bent at a strange angle. "It's a bird," his sister clucked her tongue, "and it's hurt. It's so big." The swifts and swallows that nested in the upper caverns, and sometimes became trapped in those beneath, were a mere mouthful. This bird was almost as big as they were. Excitement bubbled in his chest. "We can take it back." Delvina's speckled face split into a grin. "Yes, it's injured. We can help it." He thumped her shoulder. "Silly. It's our trophy for the challenge." She shook her head. "It wouldn't survive long in the caverns. We should tend it and release it when its wing is healed." He rubbed his icy hands together, excitement mounting. "Yeah, but it's dying anyway, and look how big it is. Plenty of meat and feathers. Have you any idea how many crystals that's worth? The crew will have to induct us." Her brow furrowed. "I guess." "Here, help me catch it." He shouldered out of his jerkin. They each took a corner, spread it out like a net, and walked towards their prey. An eye, black as coal, snapped open and stared back at them. He paused. "Perhaps we should brain it first." Crouching, he picked up a large rock lying in the cleared area in front of the spur. In a flurry of movement, the bird catapulted backwards, banging into the cliff behind. Its wings pumped downwards, or at least one did, while the other thrashed uselessly. It gave a long, keening whistle. It stretched upwards, its outline blurring and dissolving until a tall, skinny figure stood half-canted against the rock wall. "Don't kill me!" Every story featured on Storytime appears with the author's permission. If you have enjoyed this sample of Heart of the Mountain by Jeanette OHagan, be sure to check out the show notes for details of how to find more of her work. Follow the links to purchase your own copy and find out what happens next. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you never miss an episode.